Morning glory, evening grace, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt in Studio West. Hope you're having a good Monday on this February 3rd. Let me begin by telling you that the United States has 5 major domestic problems. 5. Number 1, open borders and migration, a crisis that has many implications for many Americans. Number 2, drugs, particularly drug deaths. They're connected. Fentanyl comes over our border. Fentanyl killed at least 43,000 people in 2022. The number went up in 2023, 2024. It is part of an overall drug problem that includes synthetic opioids made wholly in the United States. That problem is coming under increasing control. But fentanyl is deadly and it's flooding in. It's a 3-country problem. Precursor chemicals, the stuff you make it with, come from China. It's assembled in Mexico, and some people import it from Canada. Mostly it is made in fentanyl from chemicals that come from China, but some of it comes in from Canada. Illegal migration comes from primarily Mexico, though not country of origin. It's just the border they cross is our border with Mexico, and some comes from Canada. Our 2 big problems then, migration and drug deaths due to fentanyl, can be traced to 3 countries, China, Mexico, and Canada. Donald Trump brought the tariff hammer down on all 3 of them this weekend. He has announced he is postponing for 30 days the hammer on Mexico, and he's talking with Justin Trudeau, which is like talking to a wall. There's just not a lot of brilliance there. Pierre Poilievre has meanwhile announced what he'll do if he's the Prime Minister of Canada, and includes a lot more border security. But let me say, we have other issues as well. Crime, that's partially related to migration. Homelessness, which is partially related to drugs and a little bit to migration. And the collapse of public education. And I'll come to the nation's report card later in the program. But what Trump did with his tariffs, it's got nothing to do with traditional tariff policy, which, by the way, belongs to the Congress, not to the executive branch. And that would be the tariffs of Hamilton's era, the framing era, the tariffs that Lincoln liked, Civil War era tariffs, the tariffs that William McKinley liked. Those were tariffs intended to prop up American manufacturing and make it more difficult for European and other nations to import in the United States. And that's not really what we need right now. But we need national security tariffs, and they're within the authority of the president, and he is using them to achieve national security goals, primarily the control of migration and fentanyl. Good for him. My friends at the Commentary Podcast, which I listened to today, the entire way up and down the implacable hill, are just wrong. They're just wrong. They talked about tariffs only as an economic matter. As an economic matter, and this will bring me to my market report, which I'm doing early, sponsored by our friends at American Federal. And American Federal, of course, sells and buys gold. And American Federal, 1-800-221-7694, 1-800-221-7694. They're kind of, I would assume, tariff agnostics, because they don't care. It's got nothing to do with the price of gold, except gold went up today almost, well, it's up 0.81% at this hour, $2,858 an ounce. So some people say tariffs cause inflation. Other people say, no, it doesn't, not when they're targeted on national security purposes. I don't know. Dow is down a little bit. The S&P is down about 0.5 point. The NASDAQ is down about 0.8%. So markets don't know what to make about this either. It might result. A tariff is a very simple thing. An importer gets hit with a tariff on what they're sending for sale into the United States. The person that pays the tariff is on the receiving end. So if you're Walmart and you're buying a bunch of, let's say, Canadian maple syrup, I don't know that they do that, but maybe they do, then you're going to get hit with a 25% tariff, and your maple syrup, which might have cost $10 a bottle, is now going to cost $12.50 a bottle, and you're probably going to pass that on to your customer. So people who like Canadian maple syrup just got whacked. But that's not the point. The point isn't to raise money from Canada. The point is to leverage Canada into a more responsible role on the border and vis-a-vis fentanyl. And Pierre Poilievre, who is going to be their new prime minister because they're going to throw out the crazy socialists, got that. Apparently, Claudia Sheinbaum, who's the president of Mexico, has also talked to President Trump, and she got it. China is a whole different thing. I would tariff everything in China. They are our enemy. They are our strategic. We wouldn't do trade policy with the Nazis once we figured out who they were. We ought not to have done trade policy with the Soviets once we figured out that Stalin was not our ally anymore after 1945, but an adversary. We don't do trade with enemies, trading with the Enemy Act, that sort of stuff. We shouldn't do it. And what COVID revealed to us all is that we were supply line dependent for many critical materials, not merely PPE, protective equipment like face masks and scrubs and gloves, but pharmaceuticals. And people said, what? So to the extent that we can encourage the production of very essential products, not in China, but in the United States or somewhere else, that's good. Right? That's very good. The threatened tariff against the EU, I don't know. I don't know what the EU is doing. Doesn't sound very good. I trust Donald Trump on this. But I know that there are two kinds of tariffs. National security tariffs, and I'm all for them when applied the right way, and I think Donald Trump did. And then economic tariffs, which are across the board, and I'm not a big fan of. I'm a free trader from the Reagan era, and it's in my milk. It's in my blood. Just the more trade, the merrier. Adam Smith. But sometimes you can't trade with bad regimes, and you can ignore what those regimes are doing. Flooding your country with fentanyl, which it's probably killed millions of Americans. We don't know. Fentanyl gets mixed in with other bad substances, and kids especially are prone to order a Valium or a one pill online because they're studying hard for a test, find out it's got fentanyl in it, either become addicted or die. One pill can kill. Mrs. Youngkin, the First Lady of Virginia, started that in Virginia. Don't buy one kill on the dark web. Don't do that. Don't buy one pill on the dark. It could kill you. Now, I also want to say that gold is the great teller of no tales. When gold goes up, there's inflation in the wind. It's gone up a little bit. So maybe tariffs will cause inflation. Maybe not. I'll watch it all week long. You should as well. But the reason I buy gold every year at the same time, in January, I bought gold from Nick Rovich and American Federal this year, last month, 1-800-221-7694, is I'm a dollar cost averaging guy. Buy the same thing at the same time every year or every quarter or every month, and you're likely to average out over time. You won't buy in a dip, or you won't buy in a swing up. You'll buy in the middle over time. That's why you do it that way. Some of you want to sell gold. That's fine too. Nick does that. But it's so honest, so transparent. I wanted to let you know that going in. But when you hear people talk about tariffs, here's Donald Trump talking about tariffs in the Oval Office today, cut number 2.
We've disagreed before, and I'm sure they didn't have any idea what they were talking about because already you see what's happening. Look at Colombia. Look at what happened with that. Everybody said that with Colombia it was going to be a disaster. In one hour, everything was settled. You know why? Tariffs. Without tariffs, they wouldn't have been the same way. They would not have treated me the way they treated me, which was extremely nicely. And I don't want to use countries. I don't want to use names, but tariffs are very powerful, both economically and in getting everything else you want. Tariffs for us, nobody can compete with us because we're the pot of gold. But if we don't keep winning and keep doing well, we won't be the pot of gold, and then tariffs won't be so good for us.
What he went on to say about Mexico and Canada, cut number 6.
Is there any chance that Canada or China could also get out of the tariffs after you struck a deal with Mexico?
Well, nobody's out with Mexico. We had a great talk with Mexico, and we had President Sheinbaum is a woman. I like her very much. We've had good relationships, but we have to stop fentanyl from coming in, whether I like somebody or not, and we have to stop the illegal aliens from coming in. I think we've lost 200,000 people on average a year for many years, much higher than the 100,000, could be even closer to 300,000. And they've agreed to put in 10,000 soldiers permanently, like forever, 10,000 soldiers at their side of the border and stop fentanyl and illegal aliens from coming into our country. They have a big incentive to do. Other than that, we've agreed to talk and consider various other things. We haven't agreed on tariffs yet, and maybe we will, maybe we won't. But we have a very good relationship. I also spoke with...
Okay, pause it on Canada. We'll come back to Canada.